Season 5, Episode 3 of The Chosen. The tension is rising fast. The temple has already been overturned, the merchants humiliated, and the high priest left speechless. But now comes the real storm, the reckoning. As whispers turn into threats and crowds turn into mobs, Jesus doesn't step back. He steps deeper into confrontation, shaking the hearts of the people and the pride of those who fear losing control. This episode is not just about miracles or parables, it's about confrontation, prophecy, and a kingdom that cannot be stopped. Let's break it all down. Episode 3 picks up right where the chaos left off. The overturned tables, scattered coins, and trembling merchants still echo in the air. But while the temple courts are beginning to quiet down, the stir it caused throughout Jerusalem is only getting louder. The Pharisees and temple leaders are reeling. Caiaphas looks furious but trapped, like a man standing on thin glass. He wants to move, to strike, to crush the threat, but the crowd is still with Jesus. People are murmuring in alleyways and on rooftops, trying to make sense of what just happened. Some are terrified, others are inspired, but everyone agrees on one thing: things will never be the same again. The disciples, meanwhile, are equally shaken. Peter's pacing. Simon the Zealot is on edge, fists clenched. Even John looks restless. They know what just happened wasn't just bold, it was dangerous. And yet Jesus is calm, speaking softly, preparing for what comes next. He begins teaching again, not with parables this time, but with sharp truth. He doesn't soften his words. He calls out hypocrisy directly, repeating words of the prophets. You honor me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me. The words sting. They're not just meant for the priests, they're for everyone who's built a false image of God for comfort or control. That moment sets the tone. The tension spreads fast. Some of the temple guards want to arrest Jesus immediately. But again, fear holds them back. The people are listening, wide-eyed and silent. Nobody moves. Caiaphas instructs his men to wait, to gather evidence, to let the pressure build. He knows that if they act too fast, they'll turn Jesus into a martyr. So instead, he plays the long game. They send spies into the crowd, men pretending to be curious, pretending to believe, but really trying to trap Jesus in his own words. At the same time, another storyline unfolds quietly, almost beneath the surface. Judas. His eyes are watching everything. He's drawn in by the power and the popularity, but there's a look in his face that's harder to read now. He sees opportunity, but also danger. He seems impressed, maybe even proud of Jesus in the moment, but there's a seed of doubt forming, one that might not bloom now, but it's been planted, and it's growing. Then there's a scene that hits differently, a confrontation between Jesus and a Pharisee named Shammai, not one of the loud accusers, but a thinker, a scholar. He approaches not with anger, but with questions. Why here? Why now? Why do this so publicly? And Jesus responds, not to attack, but to reveal. He quotes Isaiah and Jeremiah, just like before. Has this house, which is called by my name, become a den of robbers? It's not just a challenge, it's a wake-up call, a reminder that God sees, even when no one else does. And that message, it lands harder than any shout or threat. This first part of the episode builds like a slow burn. There's no explosion, no miracle display, just weight. Spiritual weight. You can feel it pressing on every character. The people are divided, the leaders are trapped. And Jesus, he's walking a line that no one else dares to touch. But he's not backing down. And this is only the beginning. As the day turns to evening, the tension doesn't ease, it thickens. Jesus leaves the temple courtyard, not in fear, but in focus. The disciples follow, trying to stay close, but their conversations are scattered. Some whisper anxiously, worried about what the priest will do next. Others argue quietly over strategy. Should they stay in Jerusalem or move to a quieter town? But Jesus walks ahead, steady and sure, like a man who already knows what tomorrow holds. In the shadows, temple informants trail behind them. You can feel the danger rising, but Jesus doesn't change direction. His silence is louder than the noise around him. When they stop for rest near the Mount of Olives, the disciples ask him the questions burning in their minds. Why now? Why like this? Why make them angry? Jesus looks at them and answers with words that are both heavy and holy. Because the truth must be revealed, even if it burns through the lies like fire. That single sentence silences them all. There's no easy answer. There never was. Back in the temple, the mood shifts from shock to strategy. The priests gather late into the night. Some demand immediate action. "He's dangerous," one says. "He's rallying the people." But Caiaphas raises a hand, silencing the room. He knows better than to act out of emotion. He's a politician as much as a priest. He suggests a trap, not force, not violence, at least not yet. They'll send more spies, plant more questions, twist his words in front of the people. If he slips just once, they can accuse him openly, without backlash. Nicodemus, still lingering at the edge of the council, says nothing, but his eyes speak a different story. He's torn, drawn to Jesus, but rooted in tradition. He doesn't know which voice to follow, yet the voice of the council or the voice in his heart. Meanwhile, a surprising scene unfolds outside the city. A small group of Pharisees confront Jesus again, but this time with a more personal tone. One of them, a younger man named Elior, challenges him not with threats, but with a plea. "If you truly are sent from God, why not show a sign? Something clear, something we can't deny." The crowd leans in. The air grows still, but Jesus doesn't perform. He doesn't turn stones to bread or call fire from the sky. Instead, he says something that cuts deeper than any miracle. "You have signs all around you, but you cannot see them because your hearts are blind." It's not a performance. It's a confrontation of the soul. And it leaves the crowd wrestling, not cheering. In a quieter moment, Jesus meets with Mary Magdalene and a few other women who have been quietly watching the events unfold. They ask him if he's afraid. "They will not stop, Rabbi," one says. "They will come for you." Jesus responds with calm certainty. They've already come. They just haven't seen the end yet. It's moments like these that carry more weight than the public showdowns. Because here, stripped of the noise, you see the cost. You see the loneliness of leadership, the burden of mission. And yet, he carries it willingly. But not everyone is moved by conviction. As Judas listens in the background, his thoughts grow more complicated. He sees the crowds, the attention, the power that could be harnessed. To him, this is the moment to rise, to push forward, to press influence. But Jesus isn't talking about conquest. He's talking about surrender. And that Judas cannot understand. There's no money in surrender, no control in sacrifice. His eyes grow darker, not from anger, but from ambition twisted by confusion. This is the Judas who isn't yet a traitor, but is dangerously close to becoming one. By the end of this section, the lines are being drawn more clearly. The people are watching, the leaders are scheming, and Jesus is stepping further into the eye of the storm. There are no miracles here, only truth. And sometimes truth is the most dangerous thing of all. Mourning breaks over Jerusalem, but peace does not follow. News of the temple incident has traveled far and wide, carried by merchants, pilgrims, and gossiping lips. Everyone's talking about the man who spoke with the authority of a prophet and moved with the fire of one too. Jesus is no longer just a rabbi from Galilee. To some, he's the Messiah. To others, a threat. And the Sanhedrin, they now see him as a ticking clock, one that must be silenced before the crowds crown him king. Inside their chambers, the strategy sharpens. They begin selecting scribes and trained questioners to follow him closely. Their goal isn't debate, it's entrapment. They don't want answers, they want evidence, something they can twist, something they can use. They know they can't stop the crowds, but if they can turn the crowd against him, then everything changes. Jesus returns to the temple again, not in fear, but in purpose. This time, he teaches with intensity. He speaks parables, but not soft ones. These are sharp, cutting through pride like a blade. He tells of tenants who reject their master, of builders who ignore the cornerstone, of guests who refuse the wedding invitation. Each story is layered with truth, but every ear knows exactly who he's talking about. The Pharisees shift uncomfortably. The chief priests glance at one another, their faces tightening. The stories aren't just lessons, they're accusations, and Jesus delivers them not with cruelty, but with clarity. He isn't hiding anymore. Every word he speaks now is fire aimed directly at the hardened hearts before him. The disciples are on edge. Matthew watches the crowd closely, scanning for threats. Andrew whispers to Jesus, warning him that they're being followed again, but Jesus nods, almost as if he expected it. Let them come. he says. The truth is not afraid of shadows. Simon the Zealot, meanwhile, has had enough. He wants to fight not with fists, but with plans. He sees the danger, the trap being set. We should leave, he tells the group. Go back to Capernaum. Regroup. Gather more people. But Jesus looks at him and says, I did not come to gather an army of men. I came to gather hearts that are ready. And that answer leaves Simon both moved and frustrated, because the fight he was trained for is not the one unfolding here. Then something subtle but powerful happens. A blind man is led into the temple by his friends. He cries out for healing. The Pharisees watch, hoping Jesus will heal on the wrong day, in the wrong way, so they can accuse him. But Jesus pauses. He kneels before the man and whispers something we can't hear. The man nods. Jesus tells him to wash in the pool of Siloam. The man leaves. No public miracle, no flash, just obedience. And yet, something is happening. Jesus is not avoiding their trap. He's walking straight into it, but on his terms. Because for him, timing is everything. As Jesus continues teaching, a new voice rises from the crowd. It's a lawyer trained in the law of Moses. Calm, sharp, rehearsed, he steps forward and asks, Teacher, what is the greatest commandment? The question seems innocent, but it's bait. Clever bait. Because no matter how Jesus answers, someone will be offended. But Jesus doesn't hesitate. He speaks plainly. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these two. The answer is perfect, undeniable, unshakable. The crowd murmurs, some in awe, others in anger. The trap didn't spring. It collapsed. Because truth once again escaped their grasp. By now, the priests know this can't go on. The people are still with him. The traps aren't working. And the more they press, the more he reveals their hypocrisy. So Caiaphas orders something new. Discredit the man, yes, but also isolate him. Create division. Feed rumors, stir fear, make the people believe that Jesus isn't safe, isn't stable, isn't from God. And slowly, we see this tactic begin to work. Not on the devoted, not yet, but on the uncertain. On the ones who liked the miracles but now fear the consequences. On the ones who cheered at the healings but shrink from the conflict. It's subtle, but it's growing. Just like the darkness that now begins to cloud the edge of the city. The episode continues to build, not through action, but through pressure, like a storm waiting to break. You can feel it. In every glance from the Pharisees, in every nervous step of the disciples, in the silence that follows Jesus' bold words. Something is coming. Everyone senses it. And the most chilling part, Jesus is walking straight into it on purpose. As twilight begins to fall over Jerusalem, the city feels heavier than ever. Not just in the air, but in the spirit. It's as if everyone is holding their breath, waiting for something, anything, to shift. And right at the center of it is Jesus, calm as ever, surrounded by men who love him, fear for him, and are slowly realizing that following him won't end the way they once imagined. The disciples are beginning to grasp a painful truth. Jesus isn't trying to avoid the cross. He's walking straight toward it. And with each step, the opposition grows stronger. The temple leaders double down. Word spreads through their networks. Synagogue rulers, informants, even political allies are now watching Jesus closely. Whispers rise. He's dangerous. He's dividing the people. He's threatening the law. And Judas, he hears them all, not just with his ears, but with a heart growing more conflicted by the hour. But before darkness fully sets in, Jesus delivers one final blow, one that echoes through generations. He stands once again before a crowd, this time surrounded by Pharisees and Sadducees alike, and speaks what can only be described as a divine warning, not with rage, but with heartbreaking authority. "Woe to you," he begins, "you who shut the door of the kingdom in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, and you do not allow others to enter either." The words are like thunder, direct, cutting, unavoidable. He calls them whitewashed tombs, clean on the outside but full of decay within. He reveals their obsession with the appearance of holiness, while their hearts remain untouched. Each word strips away the illusion of righteousness the religious elite have built for years. The crowd doesn't cheer, they don't laugh, They just listen, stunned, breathless, afraid. It's in that silence that something begins to change. You can feel the shift. What was once curiosity about Jesus now turns to choice. People begin realizing they have to pick a side. There's no room for middle ground anymore. He's not just a teacher or a prophet. He's claiming authority that no one's dared to claim before. Authority over the law, over the temple, over life and death itself. That kind of claim demands a response, and not everyone is ready to give it. Some begin to back away, unsure. Others look around nervously, afraid of what the Romans might do if this movement grows. And still others, deep in the crowd, begin plotting. Not just the priests, not just the officials, but ordinary people who feel their comfort, their traditions, even their power slipping through their fingers. That's the terrifying thing about truth. It reveals. And when truth threatens what people love more than God, they turn violent. And yet, Jesus is unmoved. He knows what's coming. He begins to speak of the future, not in detail, but in warning. He talks about destruction, deception, trials. He speaks of days when brother will betray brother, when the temple itself will fall. His words aren't designed to scare. They're meant to prepare. But for the disciples, the weight is almost too much. Thomas looks shaken. James and John exchange worried glances. Even Peter, bold and brash as ever, looks quieter now. This isn't just about Rome or religion anymore. It's about something much deeper, something eternal. And they're just beginning to understand that following Jesus doesn't lead to safety. It leads through sacrifice. As the episode nears its end, we see Jesus walking away from the temple for what feels like the last time. He looks back once, and there's sadness in his eyes. Not fear, not regret, just sorrow. "Jerusalem, Jerusalem," he whispers, "you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you. How often I long to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. But you were not willing." That line hits like a final heartbeat, both an invitation and a judgment. It's beautiful, and it's devastating, because it shows exactly who Jesus is, a savior who loves even those who reject him. And as night falls over the city, one final image lingers. Jesus and his disciples moving slowly down the hill, the temple glowing behind them in the fading light. The calm before the storm. Because from this point on, nothing will be the same. The battle lines are drawn. The traps are set. And the Messiah is walking toward his destiny, not with an army behind him, but with a cross ahead of him. Season 5, Episode 3 doesn't just tell a story, it prepares us for the moment everything changes. The questions have been asked, the warnings have been given, and now the countdown begins. Now the city sleeps, but the war in the spirit has only begun. Beneath the surface of Jerusalem's stone streets and candlelit homes, hearts are wrestling in silence. Some lay awake haunted by Jesus' words, unable to forget the truth they heard in the temple. Others whisper behind locked doors, plotting ways to stop him before he gains even more ground. The religious elite now realize this isn't just disruption. This is exposure. And exposure threatens everything they've built. Their status, their rituals, their illusion of control. They fear Jesus not just because he teaches with authority, but because he sees them. He sees what they hide. And nothing terrifies the proud more than being seen for who they truly are. Meanwhile, Jesus prays. Alone, under the stars, he lifts his voice to the Father, not for escape, but for strength. Because he knows the path he's on leads only to one place, suffering. And yet he doesn't flinch. That's the part that breaks you. He doesn't run, doesn't hide. He chooses this, all of it. For them, for us. In the quiet hours before dawn, a subtle scene takes shape. Judas, walking alone, deep in thought. He's not the villain yet, not entirely. He's confused, torn between loyalty and frustration. He sees what Jesus is doing, but he doesn't understand why it's not turning into something greater, something more powerful. Where others see a kingdom of heaven, Judas is still imagining a kingdom on earth, with seats of honor, political change, and glory. The longer Jesus delays that dream, the more Judas feels betrayed, not by cruelty, but by unmet expectations. That's how it begins, not with hate, but with disappointment. And disappointment left unchecked always finds someone to blame. The disciples are also entering unfamiliar ground. Their faith is being tested not by storms or hunger, but by the slow grind of fear and uncertainty. Andrew wonders out loud if they're in over their heads. Matthew quietly writes down Jesus' words, maybe to remind himself they were real. Mary Magdalene clings to his every movement, sensing something sacred in his silence. And Peter, he starts to show signs of what's coming. A boldness laced with pride, a love that's strong, but not yet tested. He says he'll never leave Jesus. He believes it. But shadows are already forming around those words. This episode isn't about miracles or crowds cheering in the streets. It's about the shift, the turning point, the moment the journey to the cross becomes unmistakably clear. Jesus has drawn a line in the sand, not by force, but by truth. And now, everyone must decide which side they're on. The leaders have chosen fear. Some of the people are starting to choose distance. But the faithful few, they remain, hearts pounding, unsure of what's next, but unwilling to leave the one who changed everything. Because they've seen too much, heard too much, loved too deeply. And even though the road ahead looks dark, they sense something burning within, a hope that refuses to die. As the episode fades to black, you're left not with answers, but with weight. A sense that the story has passed a point of no return. The next time Jesus walks into the temple, it won't be to teach, it will be to fulfill. Prophecy, promise, and pain are all colliding. The countdown to the cross has officially begun. And yet, in all the tension, there's still a flicker of peace. Because even as the world plots his end, Jesus walks in obedience, not fear. And that's where the real power lies.